Alright, so this is part two. As I said in the first part, this is going to be like full on spoilers. So if you haven't played the game or if you care about spoilers at all, I guess, just don't watch this until you've beaten the game. So the first thing I think I should really talk about is this seems kind of like the Final Fantasy IX of Shin Megami Tensei, if that makes sense. So I mean, there's so many callbacks and just things from the entire franchise. Like, we have a massive amount of demons, and they come from everywhere. You know, there are a few demons I think that were only in Demi Kids that got redesigned and thrown in here. We have a fantasy setting in a Mikado, which is kind of like Last Bible in a way. The starting area of the game is on top of a tower, and descending the tower, you fight Minotaur and Medusa, which is a reference to Megami Tensei 1 and 2. Not many people know about that. The skill inheritance system basically is the one from Devil Survivor. Uh, Demonica's, of course. Smartphones that run the demon summoning program are around, which is kind of an idea from Devil Survivor 2. I think that was first introduced there. That might be in something else, but I think that's flat out Devil Survivor 2. Because in 1 they used, like, not DS's. Steven is present from SMT1. People have an issue with that. I think he somehow, with his, like, smarts, found out, how to move around the Amala network. I think that's how he's, moving around. Because I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's in SMT2 or he's in some other game he probably shouldn't be alive in. So there's that. We have a reincarnation of a goddess. So, you have Shin Megami Tensei's actual meaning come into play. Then we have an ICBM attack on Japan from America. So, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that, is from all over the franchise. It feels like a callback, It's kind of a mix of some of the older stuff with some of the newer stuff, and I really like that. I don't think enough people call attention to that. And that's basically what this is. This game is a celebration of the franchise and all of its spin-offs up until this point. Almost to the point I wonder if the developers knew, oh shit, index is possibly going down. This could, in the worst case scenario, be our last game. Let's go all out on this. That's what I'm thinking. And I know some people might think that's crazy, but I kinda get the impression they went all out for this game with, all the demons and, just all the callbacks. I almost wonder if they were thinking, hey, this could be our last Megami Tensei anything. So let's, do everything we can to make this one good. Before I go into the story, I want to talk about the gameplay for a little bit. So, basically, it seems like everyone's saying SMT4 is the best gameplay in the entire series, and I agree with that. I guess build-wise for the main character, something a lot of people are talking about is it was very easy to fuck up your main character's build in Nocturne to the point where your main character, wasn't just that productive of a member of the team if you didn't know what you're doing. You could use, like, Fog Breath and, build up plenty of skills to make your main character super powerful, but it was also, there is enough room there for if someone was playing through for the first time without a guide, they could make a pretty shitty build. This game doesn't have that, and you really can't fuck up your main character at all unless you're, like, pumping magical abilities into someone who doesn't have a high magical stat, or, if you're just doing something crazy like that where your skill set doesn't, like, match up with your stats, which, honestly, that's your own fault at that point. So, that's something I really do enjoy, though. Buffs and debuffs almost feel a little bit nerfed. And I say that because in Nocturne and Strange Journey, from the couple hours I've played of both of them, it's to a point where if you're not using buffs and debuffs, you're fucked. In this game, you can kind of brute force your way through that. So buffs and debuffs are still really good. And I mean, I had Luster Candy +3 and Fog Breath +3 on my main character, and I abuse the hell out of them. But at the same time, you don't need to waste your slots using those skills if you don't want to, whereas a few of the other Mega 10 games, I feel like they kind of, hey, you really need to have buffs and debuffs or else you're going to get fucked. So that's kind of a breath of fresh air, and I don't see many people talking about that either. I'm sure for the bonus bosses, that's not going to be the case. I'm pretty sure you're going to need buffs and debuffs for them. Another thing I want to talk about is near the end game, it seems like a lot more enemies have, I don't know what to say, I guess smarter AI. It almost felt like they were aiming for weaknesses if I had any in my party towards the end there. And I'm not sure if that was just bad luck or if they like used, like they programmed the AI to do that. But I thought that was fascinating because, how many times have you had it where a demon would use a fire attack on a demon that they know blocks fire over and over again? Which still happens, don't get me wrong, but I think it's kind of cool that if this is actually true, I haven't really looked into this, if they do snipe out weaknesses, that's pretty cool because now we, have even more equal footing in terms of fights, which is something I've always liked in SMT because the press turn system goes both ways, which a lot of RPGs battle systems are either biased towards you or the enemies. Then I guess the last thing I really want to talk about is the save anywhere stuff in Charon. So a lot of people were really hesitant about that when it was first announced, and you said, "Oh, there's not going to be any challenge in this game because you can save right before anywhere you die and just reload the save right before the boss, or you could just pay to be revived, fight the boss over and over again." But they compensated for that, and I say that by, I guess I'm going to put it this way. If Shin Megami Tensei 4 had the same save system as, say, Nocturne or any of the other mainline games where you can't save anywhere, this would without a doubt be considered the hardest SMT, like modern SMT, without a doubt, because so many battles can just fuck you over compared to the other games. It's to the point the boss battles, and I guess the random encounters as a whole, were built on the idea that you can save anywhere. And I'm not sure if this is something I would like to be a mainstay in the series. I'm a little hesitant because, it gets to the point where you're just save scumming over and over again to defeat a boss you have trouble with. You don't have to feel the pain from like Nocturne where, oh, this boss is tough, you died, now you have to go all the way through the dungeon, and, you actually feel the loss. And this, it almost feels kind of, actually, I guess I don't want to compare it to Dark Souls, but it almost feels like, oh, hey, you died, just reload right, like 3 seconds before you died, and there you go, kid. Death kind of becomes meaningless. You don't really care about getting that game over anymore like you do in the other games. So that's kind of disappointing, but I guess that's kind of a matter of preference too. Thinking about it, I think for a handheld game, that's a good decision, because how many times have you had it where you're playing an RPG on a handheld or something, you need to do something else and just have to leave it hanging and hope the battery doesn't die because you can't save. It's something like that. So maybe for the console SMTs, they're not going to have that, but for the handheld ones, they would have that, and that'd be nice. But it's kind of to a point where the game is overly hard to, compromise with the fact that you can save anywhere, which is interesting. Not many other RPGs have something like that. And then I guess the last thing I want to talk about before the story is the demon redesigns. I dislike the majority of them. I understand for the newer demons, yeah, we need a new guy because Kaneko isn't involved with the project. There's no reason to change Lucifer or any of the archangels or Abaddon or anyone else. They looked fine. They really did. Now, I guess I want to start small and end big. For some of the more average enemies, or a few of them, I can't really call to mind much that got redesigned. Well, I guess there's Omo Ikane, who is the only redesign I actually like better. He has the whole body made of tendrils thing, which is really cool. But then we have a few other demons that got redesigned that were just average enemies, like Abaddon. The new Abaddon looks stupid. What happened to giant sludgy mouth thing? We got a grayish green head with wings on it, and it just looks dumb. There's a few others that I can't really remember, but there are a few other redesigns. But I guess the big redesigns are the archangels and Lucifer. Now, I will say Merkaba's final form doesn't look too bad. It looks kind of stereotypical. Oh, hey, this is like a RPG final boss type thing with how grand it is, I guess. But the Archangels redesigned look kind of dumb. Not gonna lie. I guess something I saw in game FAQs. I don't know who said this, but I wish I could give them credit. But they made a post that said something like, I can't imagine any of the archangels like existing in a 3D plane because they all look like tattoos. And he nailed it. That is exactly the problem I have with the archangel redesigns. They don't look like they could even like exist or live and breathe in, you know, a 3D world. And I guess there are people that are like, well, in the Bible the angels aren't supposed to be comprehended well and all that other stuff, but they still look really stupid. Like Michael has two hands holding a head biting a snake. That's pretty dumb. Imagine fighting that. Like, how does it attack, or how do you attack it? Like, it kind of breaks the, I guess, immersion I had for the battles. Merkaba looks, like I said, the first form looks pretty stupid and has the whole tattoo looking thing going on. Second form, I kind of like they have like a split where one half looks angelic, one half looks kind of demonic. That was kind of cool. But like I said, it looks like a stereotypical, like it looks like something I would fight in Dragon Quest like 5 or something as a final boss. Then we have Lucifer. Why? He looks awful. Okay, so I want to divide into the first form and the second form. The first form looks like a douchebag chancellor that like had sex with Slenderman, and then they had like a Slenderman chancellor baby thing. It looks so bad. And then we have the second half, which he looks like he's that like the first form of Lucifer with shitty looking wings attached to his back, and he has a boarded Walter thing for a hand puppet. It looks stupid. I'm sorry, it just looks so dumb. Why couldn't we just have the other Kaneko design in the game? That looks so much better. I really don't get it. We could have just gone with the older, I guess more simple yet still more cool looking designs Kaneko did. Some of the some people have complained that a lot of the bigger bosses just look kind of out of place for SMT. I don't really think they look out of place. I just think they look kind of so-so. Like Asmodeus and Minotaur, for example. Like Minotaur is pretty okay looking. Asmodeus looks kind of stereotypical Power Rangers-y. Oh, actually Medusa. Medusa looks... I'm not a fan of Medusa's redesign either. Something about her eyes just looks off to me. It does not scream Megami Tensei at all. So, yeah, in all honesty, the redesigns and the new designs, not a fan. I really hope this guy never does an SMT again. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I think, while they're not good, I would rather we have this guy than someone else. Because they still look kind of creepy and weird in that SMT fashion. They just don't look as creepy and weird and badass as Kaneko's. I hope I'm saying that right. Kaneko, whatever. They don't look as cool as his designs, but we could have got something a lot worse, where everything looks all like anime stereotypical and stuff like that. So I don't think it's as bad as, you know, like I don't think it ruins the game by any means. I just really hope that Kaneko comes back eventually. So now we're on to the story, and I guess I want to talk about the settings first. Mainly the neutral Tokyo that most of the game takes place in, and Mikado. One thing I really like about both of these is that Mikado is more obviously lawful, while Tokyo is more obviously chaotic. But even then, within both of those settings, we do have a law, chaos, and neutral split, where the luxurers in Mikado represent law, whereas the casualties are representing chaos. And then we have Tokyo, where the Ashurakai represent law, and we have the Ring of Gaia representing chaos. So even though both settings have more predominant law or chaos themes, they both are still struggling for control with all these different groups, which is pretty cool. They do some really awesome stuff with that, especially with, I guess, mid-game in Mikado. There's all the casualties are talking about, how did we put up with this for so long? We should get weapons or something in case the lecturers try anything, bad that will just enslave us any more than we already are. They start wondering, why have we gone so long living like this without any rights? So I really dug that. With Tokyo, I think it was pretty cool how they always showed the Ashurakai as lawful but corrupt. They kind of just seem like douchey, like police officers in a sense. And then we have the thing where we understand where the origins of the red come from and just how fucked up that is, and that, kind of closes any idea of lawfulness out the window. Another thing I find really interesting is even Jonathan, who is more law aligned, is like, okay, that's fucked up. And we have Mastema in there who, throughout, I guess, Strange Journey in SMT4, we kind of learned that he thinks what the Archangels are doing isn't what God wants, and that he's actually doing what God wants, but we really don't know what God actually wants, I guess, because, they both disagree so often. But I find it interesting that Mastema, instead of going with Mikado, he thinks Mikado, or I guess he implies that Mikado isn't necessarily that great of a place, because he's hanging around the Ashurakai building, and he says, well, this is what I think God wants. So he does want Tokyo to exist. He just wants it, he just wants the common populace to become demon food so that a certain amount of people can live on happily, which is really interesting. So I guess Strange Journey kind of dealt with that too, with Mastema kind of saying the Archangels weren't doing things right. So it's almost like the law side has kind of, almost, I don't want to say like a civil war, but the administration of the law side doesn't necessarily agree with each other. Whereas the Chaos people, it seems like all the Chaos people would really get along. I can see the Ring of Gaia people getting along well with the casualties. Well, I guess they already do get along well with Walter. Walter really likes them. And I think it's really interesting because it almost seems like for the majority of the game, the Chaos faction really know what they're doing. But Law, sometimes it seems like they're not really sure what they're doing. Because we have a few hypocritical statements and stuff with like the backstory where it's implied the angels are actually the ones responsible for the demonic invasion, yet they also are responsible for the ICBM attack to clear out the demonic invasion, and a little bit, stuff like that. And then we have the fact that 3 of the archangels are, stuck in that tower for the majority of the game, and Gabriel has to run everything on her own. So it almost seems like the Chaos has their shit together, whereas Law needs to, take some time and figure everything out before they can go ahead and create their 1,000-year kingdom or whatever they want to create. So in terms of story, I guess I'll start from scratch. Well, we're introduced to Mikado and Izuchar and the main character pretty early on. We have the summoning right, all of that stuff. One thing I really like about Mikado that I guess I never got from information we were handed pre-release was the way the caste system works is that there's a bunch of different districts for the casualties and the lecturers. So it's almost like a tiered system where like the farmers and stuff live at the very bottom of this giant mountain that Mikado is on. And then as you go up, there are different walls separating all the different districts, because originally they just made it seem like there's casualties and then there's lecturers. There's only 2 different types of division. But it seems like even then you have different like statuses of both of those groups, and depending on where they are, depends on how high up they live on this mountain, with like the religious people and the samurai all living at the very top. So that was pretty cool. The stuff with Naraku, I'm not gonna lie, I assumed Naraku was gonna be the majority of the game just because they kind of hyped that up pre-release, and my first thought going in was that they're gonna find like a teleporter or like a terminal or something that led them to Tokyo. I did not think that they would both be in the same world. I assumed it would be different dimensions, and we'd talk about the Amala network and have some info on that. No, but it turns out Mikado and Naraku are both on top of Tokyo, which was a really interesting way to do it. Uh, I looking back on it, the first terminal you find in Naraku is called the Sky Terminal, and I could not believe I didn't get that, like, because it's literally in the sky. So I felt like a dumbass. I was like, oh wow, like I just thought that was like some like elemental name bullshit or something that they were going for, but no, it's literally in the sky. That's why it's called the Sky Terminal. So that was funny. I guess we have some people have complained about Navarre because he was in a lot of the promotional stuff, and I guess he was talked about a lot in game, but he's really only there for a couple of hours and then later on in a side quest, which I'm okay with because he is he is very douchey, very stuck up. So I don't mind him not being around. He makes some really weird facial expressions too. That's interesting. So from there we have the stuff where you go into Tokyo and everyone calls you angels and people start spreading rumors about you, and you're looking for the Black Samurai and you're looking for artifacts. There's a lot of stuff happening at once. Well, I guess I will talk about the Black Samurai before I go to any of that. I think it's well, I said this in the Cathedral of Shadows episode 1, where I think it's interesting that we have a law-based society and everything's dealing with it. It might not be perfect. There's a few cracks that people realize are kind of shitty, but people like it overall. And then we have the Black Samurai, and she comes in and she says, look at how fucked up this is. This is wrong. You guys need to do something about this. And we get people from different villages becoming demons because they're reading real world literature. And there's even there's an NPC somewhere that basically what it comes down to is Mikado only really has religious texts and propaganda for their literature. The fact that they have real world literature, like one of the NPCs talks about Paradise Lost and stuff, it makes them go so crazy that they become demons, and that's really cool. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. We have a lawful society, much like our own world in a way, because, like I said in Cathedral of Shadows episode 1, we have our world, our government is all law-based, of course. So someone who is from the outside looking in to SMT4, they wouldn't see a reason to go for chaos because, oh hey, we live in a lawful world, laws are good. And they aren't seeing the full picture. We need chaos a little bit. We need to have some freedoms. So I think that's cool because then we have, so yeah, it's all comfortable in this lawful world, and then bam, we need freedom, we need power, you should be able to control your own destiny. And then the chaos faction starts to look a little nicer than they did early game. So there was that. I guess from there, where do I want to go? Well, I guess the Black Samurai being executed, but not really. I thought that was kind of cool. And it was around that time where I realized, because early on in the game, I was like, oh, watch this girl that never talks, Gabriel, or Gabby, actually, as she's called. Watch her be the Black Samurai. And I was half right. She took the form of Gabby for the execution or whatever. And it was around that time I realized, wait, Gabby, Law, Gabriel. So I felt like a asshole for not, or I guess a dumbass, for not realizing that beforehand. But I was like, oh shit, Gabby, Gabriel, there we go. And then a little bit later on, we have to hunt down the Black Samurai again, and we learn she's Yuriko, or you get the mission to kill Yuriko. And since I played SMT1, I was like, oh, Black Samurai is Lilith. Like that didn't get lost on me. So that was kind of cool. And I like then too we have that whole scene with the passage of ethics. So I went left all 3 times on that, and it was at a point too where I was kind of using a guide to get neutral, but I'm like, you know, I wonder. I'm gonna look in my own morality and just how I act as a person. I'm gonna do what I would do in real life, and I ended up going left all 3 times. That last decision is a kind of a hard one, though. Not gonna lie, that's a that's a big choice. But I did go left for it, and then from there, I guess we have Walter and Jonathan kind of go their own way, which is something a lot of people have complained about, but I really don't find a problem with it. So with Walter, I think less people complain about Walter and more with Jonathan, but I do see some people complain about Walter. Walter is very chill and relaxed for the majority of the early game, but he is pretty upset over the fact that the lecturers run everything. He thinks that's unfair. He wants, even though that he's of poor social status, he wants to be able to make his own destiny and become powerful. So it's kind of obvious that he's gonna enjoy what Lilith and the Ring of Gaia have to say because they agree with his ideology. So I found that progression really solid. I don't know why people complain about that. Jonathan, on the other hand, I can kind of see, but at the same time I want to defend. So Jonathan was always polite, and he never got too angry with people. And then it gets to the point where the archangels call you into that cocoon, and he flat out just says, Walter, and I guess if you go with Walter Flynn, you guys don't know what you're doing. I need to create a world of law with the angels, and he gets really douchey about it. The thing I want to defend is he's been polite the entire game because there's been no reason to get mad because everyone's been agreeing with him almost. There's never really a point where before that people attack Jonathan's values except if they're a villain. So in all honesty, it makes sense for him to get snappy because this is the first time in game his values are being frowned upon or fought against. Which, I don't know, some people have said that it wasn't that good of a transition into being the servant of law. I always thought, at heart he was always a lawful person, and bam, he just snapped because people are starting to disagree with him. From there we go to the Blasted and Infernal Tokyo stuff, which kind of confirms a fan theory in that every time Law, Neutral, and Chaos fight, or something big happens in the universe, the timelines split, so that effectively every different ending or choice you make in an SMT game, the universe just splits and goes off into a different timeline. So the every ending is its own canon theory kind of gets some, I guess it kind of gets confirmed here because there are alternate universes where in the backstory of SMT4 Law, Neutral, and Chaos won. And I guess we want to talk about Blessed and Infernal Tokyo itself. So like I said in Cathedral of Shadows episode 1 again, I think it's really cool that in Blasted Tokyo they didn't decide to look at or focus on the angels and who they chose. They looked at the people that were deemed unworthy to be with the angels. That was really cool because it shows how shitty life is for them. With Infernal Tokyo, that's pretty awful just on its own because everyone's fighting all the time. But that said, at least there's still structures and people, I guess people can live in buildings and stuff. Both universes seem almost equally shitty though in their own regard. So that sucks, but I think it's really powerful because this is one of the few times in SMT we finally see a society in motion for each of the different alignments. Usually it ends at the beginning of those societies, whereas, oh hey, you created a world of law, end game, or hey, you plunged the world into chaos, and then they end the game. We finally see societies that have been going for a couple decades or so, and just how they act. And from there we have where the game effectively splits the monochrome forest and the white. So Well, I guess the first thing I want to talk about before that is if you go on the Chaos path, this is when you first learn that Hikari, or Hikaru, whatever her name is Lucifer, which is pretty cool. I cannot believe they did not go with Louis Cypher or Louis Cypher. They tried making it as much as a surprise as possible. There's still kind of a hint because her name in Japanese apparently means like shining one or luminous one or something like that. But it's apparently a pretty common name in Japan anyways. So even then it's pretty hard to tell. And also her teeth are kind of sharp apparently in her portrait, which is something I didn't notice until someone pointed that out. I thought that was really cool. I don't know if they should ever do that. I don't know if they should do that with the next game. Like, I think it'd be awesome if, you know, every once in a while we got like, oh hey, Lucifer as a surprise. But I think I kind of miss Louis Cypher. He's a cool guy. Same with Louis Cypher. But I guess then we have the white and the monochrome forest. I went neutral, so I'm going to be mostly talking about that. The white kind of support my theory of, oh hey, this might be, you know, our final Megami Tensei game. Let's go all out and make this a game worthy of being the last game in the franchise. To the point where you can literally end the franchise as canon. That is one of the endings possible in SMT4. You literally can just suck the Amala network in a black hole. Everything is done. Like nothing existed. We start from square one. Everything that has ever existed in the Amala network is just sucked up in black hole and destroyed, which is a pretty morbid way to end the series. If I can totally see if, you know, as kind of just a, oh hey, this is how we're ending the franchise, someone went out and say, you know, if Atlas did fall and, you know, worst case scenario, which isn't happening by the way, SMT is still going to be made. They've announced that. You know, the worst case scenario happens where we can't make any more Shin Megami Tensei related stuff, so this is the canon ending, guys. The world, like the multiverse just gets destroyed. That would have been pretty cool, but kind of sad at the same time. Now, with the white, some people are like, oh, those are the previous Shin Megami Tensei mainline protagonists, but I don't really think so. Mainly because people have been saying, oh, but they call them the fifth son or something like that, but there's a few other mainline games to consider, guys. We have SMT9 is technically a mainline game. If is technically a mainline game. You know, whether or not you count Strange Journey, but most people count that as mainline. So it technically, you know, especially if, and I guess most people ignore 9 at this point, but with if, technically it would be sixth son, because that's what people have been saying. Oh hey, they keep saying you're the fifth son, SMT4 is the fifth mainline game, but it technically is the sixth or seventh. So I really don't find credibility in that. Not only that, but I guess in the neutral route of all the games, it's a thing where the reason all the main characters are doing that is to preserve humanity. I can't see any of them just changing their mind and going, screw humanity, let's just end everything. With none of the protagonists can I ever see that happening, especially like Kazuya or something. You know, he fought pretty hard to save his, you know, what was left of the world at that point. Demi-Fiend, maybe I can see destroying everything just because True Demon ending Demi-Fiend does kind of something similar in a sense. Aleph I can't really see doing that either, mainly because I guess if you subscribe to the Alephis Hijiri thing too, he seemed pretty cool on humanity in Nocturne too. And in 2, you know, he has the whole thing where if you go neutral, he's trying to protect both the mutants and humanity, just, you know, getting the world back on track. I can't see any of them just saying, hey, fuck this multiverse, everything's fucked up. So I really don't think the white are the previous protagonists, like some people say. But what I think the white are just either they're the desires, like the accumulation of all the desires of people that are just want everything to end, or there's some force of the multiverse that came to be because of like the law, neutral, and chaos conflict, or maybe there's just 5 people that somehow got magical powers. I guess there's no way to tell. But basically, what I think the white represent is the opposite end of neutrality. So a lot of SMT fans always say, "Oh, neutrality is, the best alignment. It's the, it's obviously the one that is the best for humanity. You know, alignment is or the neutral alignment is favored." um, the thing with that is neutrality can be both the best and the worst alignment depending on how exactly it's implemented. For example, Devil Survivor, I guess both 1 and 2, we have really shitty neutral endings where we have the Liberation ending in not SMT. In Devil Survivor 2, we have the Liberation ending where everything except for Tokyo is gone and it kind of implies humanity is done. Same with the Yuzu ending in Devil Survivor Overclocked. That's neutrality technically, but that really turns out pretty bad for humanity. So we do know through prior games, neutrality can either be the best alignment or the worst alignment, and I think that's kind of what the white are going for. Technically, their route is neutrality, but it's very destructive neutrality. It is not a good neutrality at all. It is the most negative extreme neutrality could possibly go, where we don't want this conflict, so we're just going to end everything so there can't be a conflict. Whereas neutrality, they want to preserve humanity, they want to preserve the world, they just want the conflict to end in the most peaceful way possible. Which usually involves killing both sides, but still, they want as least amount of deaths as possible. And the other thing I want to talk about with the white, or I guess the monochrome forest, is you meet Steven at another time. I don't know if he pops up in the Law and Chaos paths, but I know in Neutral, this is where you meet Steven again. And he has this quote I really like that I should probably have on me. But basically what he says is, I'm going to pull it up on the screen because I took a photo of it because I thought it was pretty cool. But what he basically says is, you chose the path that's going to cause the most pain and suffering for everyone, but has possibly the best outcome. And it was at that moment I'm like, the developers nailed it. That's exactly what neutrality is, and that is probably one of the coolest ways to depict it in any of the Mega 10 games up until this point. So that was pretty cool. And then there's another thing where it might be the final fight against the white. There's one of the white that you fight. They say, what about your friends? Are you going to listen to their points of view? And I can't remember what I said, but I said something like, no, or, I'm going to ignore them or something like that. And I can't remember what exactly happened. I think it was something like I lost all of my MP and my health went down to 1. And he said, the person, or like the leader that doesn't listen to everyone's points of view is basically nothing better than a dictator or something like that. And that was pretty messed up. Like at that point I was like, that makes sense. Even if it is neutrality, you want to listen to both the Law and Chaos sides and take the best ideas from both. That's pretty much what neutrality comes down to be. So I thought that was really awesome as well. And now for the final parts of the game, for neutrality at least, we have the entire thing where you need to go to Mikado and take down the Angels and Jonathan, then you need to go to Camp Ichigai to take down Lucifer and Walter. Now, I kind of feel like they should have switched, where in the neutral path you go to Mikado first and then you kill all the Angels and Walter and Merhaba and whatnot. And it feels really awesome, and I love the final dungeon for that part is really cool looking, and there's a lot of mini bosses on the way there, and then you beat them and you have to go to Lucifer's palace, and there's too many bosses. It's pretty short. That dungeon is kind of a gimmick, I guess, in a sense. Then you fight Lucifer and the fight's done. Now I will say Lucifer's probably harder than Merhaba, at least it felt like that for me, but I almost feel like they should have reversed it, where you go and take down Lucifer, because that dungeon is basically a few gimmicks and traps and whatnot. and then you fight two mini bosses, and then you fight Lucifer. Whereas the final law dungeon, there's a shit ton of fights, and they're all pretty hard. So I really think they should have flipped that, where in neutral you fight Lucifer first, then the angels. One thing I do really like in Lucifer's palace is that you fight Belial at one point, and you beat him. And this is something that really stuck with me. He says, "I'm not really that mad because chaos is all about getting your way because you're strong enough to kill the rest." And that's basically what you're doing. You're so strong and you don't agree with our viewpoint, so you're killing us. So in a way, you know, the whole conflict at hand, you're kind of using the chaotic means to fight chaos. And Belial's like, you kind of have the same viewpoint or that we do, or you're just proving us right. The strong get what they want and the weak don't. And I thought that was really cool. That would have bothered me if I was actually Flynn. And then one last line that I really liked was, I think, from Hope at after you kill Jonathan and Merhaba. And he says something like, "Oh, I heard what happened with Jonathan." He's like, "Don't blame yourself too hard. When you grow up, the less your friends agree with your ideologies and the less your friends agree with your values as an adult, you start to distance yourself from them." And as someone who's kind of in that 20s range, or I'm about to be 20, I can kind of relate to that. Yeah, like it gets to a point where sometimes in life, if people just don't accept your values, or you can't accept, well, I try to accept other people's values as best as I can and work with them, but you get to points where, people will be like, "Oh, I don't like this about you," and they just give you so much crap for it. You just kind of stop being friends with them, and I've done that with a few people in my life. So I really thought that was pretty impactful, especially for where I am in life right now. That's about it. I guess the neutral ending itself. Okay, one thing I want to bring up about the neutral ending: the ceiling is lifting over Tokyo, and all these like pieces of the ceiling are like breaking off of Masakato or whatever, and like landing on the skyscrapers. Okay, those have to have had killed someone. I'm sorry, but like someone must have got smushed by one of those falling boulders. But then we see the sky and everything, so that's nice. But yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say about SMT4 plot wise and everything. So I'll be surprised if anyone listens to this. It's a little bit over 40 minutes at this point, it looks like, from the recording. I know this video is probably a little bit more rambly just because I'm in a rush to get it done before, I have to go back to school tomorrow, so that's gonna suck. But what can you do? So I know I rambled and made some stupid points once or twice during the video, or I guess I stammered a little bit more than usual. That's because I want to get this out as soon as possible. So sorry about that. Hope you guys like this. See you around.